tonight we're going to cover, I hope, a couple of events in the first and second chapter of John. So if you turn to John chapter 1, we're definitely going to finish chapter 1 tonight. Unless the Lord comes, and then we won't, or unless I drop dead and Ed has to finish it. But anyway, either way, hopefully we get chapter. So Ed, you keep up, because if I drop, you take over right there. And just, yeah, no, you teach the class. I've already gone. All right. Okay, we were down to verse 47 regarding, we were talking about Nathaniel and how he didn't believe anything good could come out of Nazareth, and how he's going to be taught by Jesus now that yes, in fact, something very good can come out of the town of Nazareth. So in verse 47, it says, when Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said to him, "How is it a true Israelite in whom there is nothing false?" "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus said, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You shall see greater things than that." And then added, "I tell you the truth, you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." All right. The first thing Jesus says to Nathanael is, "You're honest. You're an honest man. There's no guile in you. There's no deception. You're very face on honest, and you say things without sugarcoating them. I mean, you just got through saying, well, not just, but recently just said, what good can come out of Nazareth? That's a very straightforward thought statement. There's nothing good can come out of that town. And instead of getting upset about it, Jesus says, "Hey, I appreciate your honesty." Now, just because you're honest doesn't mean you're right, by the way. You can be honest and be wrong. But he was, to his understanding, he was being honest about this. So he says, well, how do you know me? Because he called him by name. Never met the man before in his life. Never seen the man. And yet he says, "I know you. I know of you. I know about you." And he said, "How do you know me?" And what does he say? "Well, I saw you before Philip even called you, and you were sitting under the fig tree." Interesting. I've got to say this, you probably don't know it. But in the series that's running in the auditorium, The Chosen, according to them, Nathanael is sitting under the fig tree burning a scroll. Now, how they came up with that, I have no idea. So if you hear people talking about this, so be sure and be careful, because they are very good about just adding material in. It's not even remotely connected to what the Bible says. It's not contradictory in the sense that it's not totally wrong, but they just, for some reason, decide we'll make up a story. That's a side note on that. So now you can stay over after I'm finished and go see what they say tonight, but or not, as the case may be. But that's something I just find it interesting that, according to what I was told, that's just in there, and there's no reference even remotely close to that idea. So where they came up with it and how they developed it, I don't know. After Jesus reveals how much he knows about Nathanael, what's Nathanael's response? Nathanael says, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Now, that's a remarkable statement. That Nathaniel would have that much insight to recognize that because this man, who he's never met before, knows about him before he ever met him, that automatically makes him the Son of God. But we're going to have to give a little bit of variance here, I believe, to divine revelation, as it were, that Nathaniel knew more about the Son of God, about this man Jesus, about the Messiah, than we have revealed here, because I don't know how you would come up with that kind of conclusion based on that evidence. But nonetheless, doesn't matter. Nathaniel comes up with it. Nathaniel says, you are the Son of God. And Jesus said, well, you mean you're willing to confess me or identify me as the Son of God on something that insignificant? I mean, just because I knew all this stuff, you're going to see a whole lot of things that are going to be a lot greater than that in your lifetime. They're yet to come that will be further evidence of who I am and what I represent and why I'm here. So if you think, you're just now getting started. Now, when he says you'll see angels going ascending and descending, what do you think Nathaniel related that to? No doubt Jacob. I mean, he didn't know what to do with it. I don't think he understood that part necessarily, but he knows it's a spiritual situation. He can remember Jacob's ladder and the angels ascending and descending as Jacob saw them going through that process. So what Jesus is saying is not that he will actually visually see angels ascending and descending. If he does, he does. But and that could have happened and it's not recorded, but we don't have a record of that. But what he is saying is, you ain't seen nothing yet. Now, what will he see for sure? And that is Jesus going back up in heaven. That much we know if you want to find a correlation between the two statements. He will see Jesus ascending back to the Father after he's crucified. He'll see a resurrection without anyone there to resurrect the individual being resurrected. He'll see more than one resurrection because he'll see at least Lazarus being resurrected. He'll see Jairus' daughter who's dead, who will be resurrected. But only Jesus is resurrected with no one around. I mean, there's no one calling him out of the grave. He's just out of the grave. He's resurrected by the power, specifically, totally, without any human involvement. He is resurrected by God. And he says, so angels ascending and descending are, that's okay, but you will see far greater than that. What in just a few minutes he's going to see he'll see the first miracle take place. And things are going to happen around Nathaniel that are going to make him what? What is the purpose of all this? The purpose is to establish who Jesus is, how he's related to God, what his role in the overall scheme of redemption is. That's the purpose of the book of John. Why did John put this story in here? To establish belief in Jesus Christ, because that's the purpose of the book of John, is to establish belief in the readers, be they first century readers or be they 21st century readers. So we will see all these things take place. Now, notice Jesus describes himself as the Son of Man. It's interesting because, and you'll notice in your Bible it's capitalized, so it's not just a description, it's a title. But Jesus is more than the Son of Man. He was the Son of God. Why doesn't he use Son of God? Well, probably he uses Son of Man as a designation, but at the same time, it is not politically charged. If he uses Son of God every time he makes any of these statements, the Jews will be upset, calling him a blasphemer, trying to kill him. He's not ready for that yet. And we're not to that point in his life. That will happen. But the fact is that he's not, his intent is not to create a political controversy right now. He will create one, but not right now. So he uses the term Son of Man, possibly to avoid the implications that brings about in a political way. Okay, chapter 2. Rather famous story. I mean, all of you have read this, studied this, gone over this. I don't think I'm going to read all of the text because you are very familiar with it. But let's just go through it this way. There's a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and Jesus is there. Now, one reason this story or this particular incident is put into John more than likely. We have to make some assumptions here, but what is one of the problems that John's gospel is addressing aside from disbelief? What is the heresy that's starting to come about? There's a heresy starting. Talk about this. Don't look at me like, come on now.
Just because he's the Son of God?
Well, yes, but there's a heresy coming up in the world, religious world right now, that's called Gnosticism. And Gnosticism says that you can't be both God and man at the same time. You can be God, you can be man, but you can't be both because flesh is evil, and therefore God would have no connection with evil. And so they came up with a series of descending, if you will, gods that were created one after the other. One God created another God, was created another God. Each one getting closer and closer to humanity till they got to the one who allows Jesus to come on the earth and supposedly be both man and God. But they do not believe he's both man and God. They believe that just before he was crucified, he left the earth because he could not be crucified as a man and remain God. Okay, I mean, I'm being very superficial with this because there's a lot. We could do a whole series almost on Gnosticism, but I don't think that would be all that helpful at this point in time. But for the moment, at least, agree with me, or let me say that the God-man problem, the deism of Jesus, the humanity of Jesus, is under suspicion and being challenged, that the Messiah could not have been both, this man Jesus. So what does this illustration initially start to prove? Initially starts to prove that yes, he was a man. How does it do that? Because he's enjoying a function just like a man. In other words, people went to the wedding feast because it was enjoyable. It was a fun time. It was the social event of the season, if you will. And there was a lot of frivolity and joy and happiness. And lo and behold, here's Jesus coming into this wedding feast. Matthew chapter 11 and verse 19 says, Jesus came in eating and drinking. In other words, he was human. He liked food and he liked drink, party drinks, if you will, punch and cookies or whatever. It was Jewish punch. Don't get me wrong; it had to be Jewish punch, but it was. I mean, he was there having a good time at the wedding feast. All right. Now we have an interesting situation in this story because there's a problem. They run out of wine. Not supposed to happen. I mean, if you talk about a cardinal sin on a wedding feast, this was it. But it happens. And if you, Mary finds out about this. And Mary goes to her son Jesus and says, there's no wine. They're running out of wine. Fix it. Do something. Now, question. Was Mary wanting Jesus to perform a miracle, or was Mary wanting Jesus just to do something to fix the problem?
Just to do something to fix the problem.
I agree with you. I don't know. Of course, I don't know. I mean, there's no way to know for sure. But I don't think she was, I'm not sure she'd ever seen him do a miracle. So I don't know that she would immediately come to that, realization that he could do something like this. And so she says, in verse 3, they have no more wine. Verse 4, dear woman, why do you involve me? My time has not yet come. Now, let me clarify something. If you know, and I don't, but if you understand the Hebrew, and I only know very, very little Hebrew, a little short guy about this. Anyway, I know very little Hebrew, but what I do know is what he's saying to her and saying, my woman. He's not saying it like we'd say it in English. Woman could be a very derogatory statement. He's saying it out of affection. The Jewish phrase here is an affectionate term. I think I know why he doesn't say mother, but we'll get to that in a second, because it's just my theory, not because it says. But he says, why are you involving me? My hour has not yet come. Now, has Mary forced his hand into doing something ahead of time? In other words, she's going to throw the timetable way off kilter with this request, especially if he does anything, because he just got through saying, my hour has not yet come. I mean, don't bother me with this right now. But before I get there, I want to ask you another question. Who died and left Mary in charge? Okay? In other words, where's Mary in all this? Of course, we don't know. The Bible doesn't say. And so I'm not going to tell you I know, because I don't. But it is interesting. And most scholars agree that there must have been a family connection between Mary and whoever's involved in this wedding, and that she was one of the major hostesses of the affair, okay? And so when she realizes that there's no wine, not only panics because there's no wine, but it also creates somewhat of possibly a panic on her part, because she's partly responsible for there being no wine. In other words, if you are at the wedding shower, which is what we have now, if you're at the shower and your job was to furnish the refreshments, and halfway through you run out of punch, there's a problem here. We got to fix this, because we can't have people leaving this not having the punch and cookies that they expected to have when they got here. So we don't know, but you can make the assumption safely that she must have had some connection with the overall party system to be in a position to know, one, if they're out of wine, and two, to feel the obligation to go do something about it. So what does it mean? My time has not yet come. Again, is Mary going to upset the timetable of Jesus revealing himself or creating an issue? Well, to give that much credit to Mary, I think, is to overstate Mary's importance in what's going on here. I would suggest to you, though I don't know for sure, but I would suggest to you that Jesus has switched from a physical to a spiritual statement without informing Mary what he's doing, okay? In other words, the time of my glorification hasn't come yet, but when it does, the wine which you want me to create now or do something about, when the time is right, I will be serving and instituting wine on a spiritual level, which will represent my blood and sacrifice on the cross. So my time hasn't come yet. It's coming. There's going to be a time we're going to change. We're going to do more than change water to wine. We're going to introduce an idea, a concept, a wine or fruit of the vine that will be far greater than anything you can imagine. And although Mary wouldn't understand that either, and he hasn't got time to explain all that. I mean, he's just wanting, I believe he's wanting to say something like he says to the Samaritan woman when he says, you asked me for water. If the water I give you, you'll never thirst again. Really? Good man, that's my kind of water. She's thinking, okay, what's he done? He's not offering her physical water that's going to keep her from ever being thirsty. He's talking on a spiritual level. I believe that's what he's doing here. He's saying, my time has not yet come to introduce the wine, which will be representing my blood on the cross and ultimately salvation from sin, the blood which will cleanse sin. Now, but I love her response. She says to the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. She doesn't connect anything he said up at all. She blows right over that as though it weren't there and goes, you do whatever he says. Now, notice that who she directs her statement at, or to. Does she say, Jesus, do something? Or does she say to the servants, you do whatever he says? In other words, I don't know that she's still thinking in terms of a miraculous changing here. I think she's believing that Jesus has the creative power to come up with a solution. Now, because I think she's going to be equally surprised. Jesus has established. Now, notice what he says to her. In using the term woman, and also to these servants, he says, okay, you got this in the ceremonial jars, fill jars with water, etc., etc., etc. He will not refer to Mary as mother. He doesn't refer to her that way. Why? She is his mother in the physical sense, for it's necessary to have a mother in order to be born and so on and so forth. But what I believe is coming across here is, I'm not doing this, Mom, to please you. I'm not doing this because I'm forced to, because you're mom and I'm child. Now, he's not a child. He's not a child. He's a grown man at this point. But he gets away from any connection with calling her mother, and I believe he does it because he does not want to give the impression that because mom asked me to do this, I'm doing it. He's not doing it to obey his mother. He's not doing it to give the people at the feast more wine to drink. Now that will happen, but why is he doing it? He's doing it to establish what? His deity and who he is. So you've got these pots, and water pots would hold between, you ready for this? 120 to 180 gallons of water.
I said 20 and 30 gallons.
I'm sorry, 20 to 80. I exaggerate. My fault. That was the Texas version. It's 20 to 80, and I put it in here wrong. But anyway, you got a lot of water. All right. Now, they're filled to the brim. Why are they filled to the brim? I mean, what purpose does this serve in letting us know that they are filled to the brim? Because nothing could be added. In other words, nobody could accidentally pour something in there and turn it, Kool-Aid powder, and turn this into something, okay? Because they're right to the brim. When you have this much water and in these pots, and they are filled to the brim, if there is a change that takes place, it can't be a trick. It can't be sleight of hand. It can't be they drop the curtain down and switch the pots out real quick and put different pots up there. It's not a magic trick. It's, what is it? It's a miracle. Why? Because there's no other way you can explain it. Now, when the host tastes the wine that Jesus made, what's his statement? Why did you wait so long to bring this stuff out? This is good. Now, I will guarantee you, whatever this wine is, it's the best wine that was ever created on the face of the earth. Okay? Because when God creates it, it's the best. So this wine is the very best wine that has ever been created and will ever be created after that. And so there are people thinking, my word, well, we should have bottled that stuff up. We could have gotten a fortune for it. But point being is that now, why would you normally, assuming, all things being equal, why does the guy say what he says regarding waiting till now to bring it out? Because when you have grape juice and you drink grape juice, be it grape juice, be it fermented grape juice, doesn't matter, either way, there is a biological situation that takes place, and that is that grape juice and as well as fermented grape juice will dull your taste buds. Okay, that's a fact, and let me explain how that makes sense in something you've seen. I doubt that any of you have been to very many wine tasting parties. You may have, and I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent, so I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand one way or the other about it, but okay. But one thing you probably have noticed on TV and the news or any type of situation like that, they have, when you go to a wine tasting party, the wine is there for you to, and you go to we've had wine tasting parties in Lubbock because we have wine we had. I don't know if it's still open and running, but I guess it is. But we bottle wine from this part of the country. So yes, we know something about wine. But one of the things that they serve with the wine is cheese. Why do they serve cheese? Because when you eat cheese, it's what they call cleansing the palate. And it takes the grape juice, wine taste away so that I can taste this wine now. I can eat the cheese in between, taste this wine over here, and be able to distinguish between the two. And that's why if you go to a wine tasting party or see it on TV or whatever, they will one of the ingredients that you will see them eating is cheese, and that's the practical reason for that.
Unless it's Limburg.
What?
Unless it's Limburg cheese.
Yeah, well, probably they had probably, and I don't know that they had any cheese at the wedding. But, I don't know that they were trying to get the distinction made. But what I'm saying is that you serve the best wine first, because by the time you get to the end of the line, unless you've been eating a whole lot of cheese, your palate is such you can't tell good wine from bad wine, apparently from a hole in the wall. I mean, it's just, there's no way you can tell. So you never, and also, if there's any intoxication to this, I do not believe there was, but if there was, by the time you get to the end of the party, you don't know whether it's cheese, what it really tastes like. Now, when I say intoxicating, I have read accounts where the kind of wine that they used for wedding feast and the kind of wine that was often used in table wine, if you will, was something like 4 parts water to 1 part grape juice, even if it's fermented. So we're talking about an extremely watered down drink, slightly above Kool-Aid, I suppose. But I mean, there could be fermentation. There could be a fermented wine. There's discussion. There's no way to know from this for sure what was there. But more than likely, there was a fermentation to it, but it was so watered down that you wouldn't get, rollickingly drunk at the wedding. You'd have to drink too much you'd need 120 to 180 gallons to get enough alcohol content to actually, get drunk. But the point being that the man in charge is shocked at how good this wine is. Now, assuming it's served this late in the wedding feast, probably there wasn't that much of it consumed. We don't know that. But it has been mentioned by those who think things through like this, that if you didn't drink a whole lot of this wine, wouldn't it make a neat and wonderful wedding gift? I mean, imagine having wine for however long it would take you to drink that much wine up. You'd have a large amount of extremely good wine after the party's over and after you get back home and all this. Drink and share it when we're going to do it. So it wouldn't necessarily go to waste. But let me ask you this. Okay, the water gets turned to wine. Why? What purpose does it serve? Purpose is the same as it's going to be with all the other miracles. It's going to establish who this man Jesus is. Because we know we're out of wine. His mother knows we're out of wine. I mean, it's not a secret. But they don't know what happened. If you read carefully, the servants do what he says, but no one really sees it. They fill the water pots up. And then suddenly, there's one. Who would have seen, who saw the miracle? There's only one group that could say, well, the disciples, of course. But who else? The servants. I mean, they know what they put in there. And they know what came out. But the guy that runs the show doesn't know, because he's trying to figure out, why did you wait so long to bring this out? He didn't see anything happen. So who's the first people who get to see a miracle? Aside from the disciples. The servants. Well, how about that? The lowly servants who have no power, no clout, no influence. They're actually the first people who see the miracle and miracle take place. Now, I don't know what they saw. I have no idea. I know you put water in a pot and you pour wine out of it, you know something happened. But I mean, I have no idea what they saw or didn't see. But I know they were the ones, because they were the ones handling the water, who would have seen whatever happened happen. And this will be typical of Jesus' ministry throughout his ministry. It will be the underclass, the servants, the tax collectors, the lepers, the prostitutes, that part of society that's the low part of society that will be introduced to Jesus. Why? Because when he goes to the upper class, they're already prejudiced against him. They see it, they don't believe it, and or they claim it was done by Beelzebub, Satan. So Jesus goes to those who are willing to listen. And he introduces a lot of things that happen to underclass as opposed to the upper class. And when I say upper, not only financially, economically, but society-wise, social-wise. So even in this gathering, which probably didn't include that many high-ranking Jewish officials, but even of the group that's there, the first people who see Jesus' miracle are the lowest people in the spectrum of people who are attending this wedding feast. So this is the opening. This is the first miracle. And it says, this, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed at Cana in Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. So this is the kickoff of the belief process. What they did, if they put the faith in him, it doesn't need to do any more miracles, right? I mean, that pretty well covers it. He's who he said he is, and why would he do any more? Well, because first of all, repetition increases belief. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't just oops, or it wasn't a magic trick. It wasn't hocus pocus and changing, because he will do greater. This is rather non-remarkable if you think about it, compared to what's coming. Of course, you know what's coming because you read the story, but they don't know what's coming. And I'm sure they were amazed at water being changed to wine. And yet, as he tells Nathaniel, oh, you haven't seen the half of what's going to happen. You will be most impressed with what's coming. But the one miracle that is the greatest of all, the disciples really saw it, but they didn't understand what they were seeing, because they're going to see him die on a cross, buried in a tomb. And instead of thinking, okay, we're almost there, they begin to go, maybe the show's over. Maybe we put our faith in the wrong one. But then, of course, They'll be resurrected, and they'll come in belief to him, which is exactly what he's intending. If you want to think about it, I don't know how you would rank miracles, really. But if you look in the book of John, there is sort of a kind of escalation in importance of the miracles that John records. Because he starts with water to wine. Toward the end, he has Lazarus resurrected. And at the very end, he has the Son of God resurrected and then ascends into heaven. So you kind of get the idea that maybe John's getting the idea, if I hit them with the first one right off the bat, it'll be more than they can comprehend. Let's kind of build up to it and show a progression of miracles as they go along, some being more astounding, if you will, than others. I appreciate your time. I thank you. And you got to admit, we covered quite a bit of material today.